The solution, 9 times out of 10, the solution is already in you. You just have to get it out. As a quick reminder, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow if you find this video helpful. If you find any of my videos helpful, please like, comment on them, share them with the folks in your network that you think will find the information useful so that the algorithm can send it out to even more people who need to find it. All right. Follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and Threads at Getting the Win Show, and subscribe on YouTube at Getting the Win. So let's get into it. Good evening, my winners and goal getters. Welcome back to another edition of the Getting the Win Show. I am your host, Melissa T, the procrastination bully. Today, it's just me. I know you guys have been getting some interviews lately. Hopefully, I didn't spoil you too much of those. But today, I am coming to you with a heartfelt prompt, a heartfelt conversation, a heartfelt push. And it's 3 words. Do your work. Okay? Do your work. If you're someone who is still dealing with wounds that you need to heal, if you're still dealing with traumas that have been unaddressed, or if you're dealing with unmet needs, things that you truly did need as a child, as a teen, or even in adulthood that were never met, and those things have created voids in your life and have caused a ripple effect in your decision making and caused you to procrastinate, because that is something that happens. This is me providing you 5 ways this episode to do your work, especially if, me constantly telling you to get therapy, you're probably beating your head against the wall saying, that's too expensive for me, or it's not in the budget right now, or this is a part that a lot of people don't really say, but perhaps you've had therapy in the past and even maybe that experience was a wound for you. Perhaps you had a poor therapy experience in the past and you're like, you know what, that's not for me. Like, talking to a stranger is not for me. So I got you. Talking to a stranger may not be for you. Going to therapy may not be for you because you may have a bad experience there, but doing your work is something that is unavoidable. That's inevitable. It's something you're going to have to do in order to grow, because that thing you want, that hashtag luxury item that you're working towards, may very well require you to become a different version of yourself, a better version of yourself, a healed version of yourself. And so I'm going to talk through 5 different ways that you can still do your work, even if therapy is not an option for you right now, or if you've just decided that it's not an option for you, period. Like, you just had a bad experience with it. Okay, I got you. So first, number 1, use your words. That's number 1. I've mentioned in previous episodes that the human body needs words to heal. Now, if you're somebody who's spiritually minded, you're someone who's Christian, you're a Bible person, it talks about it in the Bible. In the book of James, chapter 5, I want to say it's verse 17. It says, confess your sins one to another, that you may be healed. And the prayers of the effectual prayers of a righteous man availeth much. That first part is exactly what we're talking about. Using your words, especially in community. So highlight that, like community, put that in all caps, constantly keep that in mind, no matter what you're doing. And if that's something you struggle with, do some research on the feelings wheel. The feelings wheel. Some of us sometimes struggle to put words to how we feel. We might be feeling low energy, so we might just say we tired, when the truth of the matter is we might be feeling disappointed because a specific situation didn't go our way. So the feelings wheel has an incredible amount of words on the full spectrum of emotions. You have the big words like happy, sad, that sort of thing. And then it branches off into more detailed descriptions. So maybe it's not just happy, like, okay, what else? Or what more definitive way can you describe how you're feeling? In the moment, you might be feeling accepted. you might be feeling significant because you accomplished something. If it's a lower energy emotion that you're feeling, you could say you're angry, but is it that you're just angry, or is it that you're frustrated? Or is it that you're annoyed? You know what I mean? Like, there are more specific words to define how you really feel. And when you use those words, it helps you get that stuff literally off your chest so you can feel better. Okay? So use your words in your conversations. Effective communication is the cheat code in life, period. Whether with a therapist, with your friends and family, with your colleagues at work, to your audience if you're a content creator. Effective communication is the cheat code in life. You get what you want when you communicate clearly. So that's number one, use your words. Number two, grieve your losses and voids. Okay? And this is why I've started with use your words first, because you're going to need your words to properly grieve your losses and voids. Earlier, you heard me talk about unmet needs. There's a point in your life where you have to simply let go of what you never got. And if you go to therapy, this is one of those exercises that a therapist would ask you to do. You're going to have a funeral for the things you never got, that you were supposed to get in your childhood, in your adolescence, or even in your adulthood if there's certain expectations that you've had that have been unmet. So you have to give yourself a space to grieve. Say, for instance, one of your biggest challenges is fatherlessness. Perhaps your father was never in your life, like E.T. the hip hop preacher, and he had to do his soul work as well. And he encourages people to do their soul work. He had to do some work to overcome and grieve the absence of his father during his childhood and his adolescence. He mentioned that it wasn't until he was in his 30s that he finally met his biological father. And when he finally did meet him, he didn't get the answers he was hoping to hear. He had to accept what his biological father told him, which was, your mom said. Your mom said. You know what I mean? Like, in E.T.'s mind, he was like, well, you're a grown man. Like, what you mean my mom said? And he had to accept what his father said. He did his deep work and he grew from there. Once he healed from that, his speaking career took off exponentially. So this is why this episode is so important. You might be experiencing a season of being stuck right now because there's certain things in your heart, in your mind, in your body that you have to clear out and overcome before you can exponentially improve your journey towards your luxury item, or exponentially speed up towards the completion of your luxury item. Okay? So if it's something where you have to have a funeral, maybe you write those things down. Write those things down that you needed and never got. Those expectations that were never met. Write them down on a piece of paper. Hold a funeral. Say what you need to say aloud regarding those things. Express your feelings openly, like aloud, not just in your head, out loud. Because again, your body needs words to heal. So say what you need to say about them out loud. And then whatever that is on that sheet of paper, physically destroy it. Burn it. Shred it. But do something physical so that your mind and your body can have closure for those unmet needs or those incomplete expectations, those unmet expectations. So that's number two. Grieve your losses and voids. If there's someone you've lost and you're grieving that, perhaps put the feelings on the paper. Not so much the person, like we're not doing that, but the way you feel concerning the loss of that person. There's a quote regarding loss that I love so much. I can't remember who said it, so I don't want to assign the quote to the wrong person. But the quote I heard was, grief is simply love with no place to go. Like when you've lost somebody you love who's no longer a part of your life, your love for that person remains a part of you, but now there's no place for that love to go because that person's no longer here. Grief is love with no place to go. And there is no shortcut to them 5 stages. Like you're going through all 5 of them. So I fully respect and understand that if what you're dealing with is grief over the loss of a person. So I still recommend writing your feelings on the paper, especially when you're in the anger stage of grief or in the sadness stage of grief. Like writing those feelings on paper and being able to fully address them, read them out loud, and then burn them or shred them up and throw them away. It helps you get it off your chest for that moment. And on this topic of grief, I'll share with you, I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, but I'll share it with you here. Tim Ross, who lost his dad on 2/24/24. He loves to name the date because of how poetic that is. February 24th, 2024. He was very, very, very close to his father. However, he's also a podcaster with hundreds of thousands of followers. And he's created a community of vulnerability. He's created a safe space online at a global scale. And right when his father died, he was in the midst of a book tour for his newly released book, Welcome to the Basement. He made a deal with himself. This is the part I want you to listen to closely. He made a deal with himself and with his grief. He said, whenever you decide to show yourself, I will not stop you. I will allow you to express. And because he has an audience of safety and he went on his book tour, whenever his grief showed up, his audience was compassionate. If he needed to cry for a few minutes, they let him cry for a few minutes. If if he needed to just pause or have a moment, like they let him have a moment. And so many people actually came up to him and expressed their solidarity because they too had lost parents or lost kids or lost, family members and were grieving alongside him. So in your case, if you're grieving the loss of a person, make that deal with your grief as well. Don't bottle it down because what happens is your body keeps a score. That's the name of a book. Your body keeps the score. And that stuff will come up and out of you in more disruptive ways if you bottle it in too much and for too long. Okay? So make that deal with your grief if that's something you're struggling with. And I'll be honest with you, this is something I'm walking through right now. Our family just recently lost a family friend that we were very close to, and she was such a sweetheart. Her heart was so huge. The lady's so petite, like she's like here. But her heart was twice the size of her body, and she was such a giver. She served at our church, and a lot of folks at our church loved her. Like her death was a shock. We're all still dealing with the shock of her loss. It's only, as of this recording, it's only been a week since her passing, and a lot of us are still in shock. And I mean, like, it hit close to home, this one. So when I'm talking to you about the grief thing, don't think I'm talking to you from some obscure mountaintop like I know everything. I'm walking through this myself. So yeah, grieve your losses and your voids. Have the funeral, write your feelings on the page, use the feelings wheel for that. if you're struggling to articulate how you really feel about the loss of that person. If you're struggling to express your anger at their absence, use the feelings wheel for that. Get it down on the page. Read those words out loud so your body can get that catharsis of release. and then burn those feelings, like burn the paper. So you have that sense of closure. Okay. This third approach, number 3, is for those times when you need to have those clarifying conversations, and perhaps you are either too scared or uncomfortable to have the conversation, or the person you want to have the conversation with has passed away and you can't have it with them. So number 3 is have the empty chair conversation with the person you're upset with, or the person who didn't meet your needs that you wanted so badly to meet them. Have an empty chair conversation with that person and say exactly what you want to say to them. Fully raw, fully open. Have that empty chair conversation. Now, the next level to this is if you have a friend or a family member who you can trust, because this is going to be a raw and vulnerable conversation you're having. So if it's a family member or friend that you know you can trust, that next level is to ask that person to role play. Have the person role play as you, and then you role play as the person you wanted to, you know what I mean? That you wanted to speak to, or vice versa. You have that option. Either way, though, speaking and having the conversation as if you were talking to the real person is still a relief for your body, because your body doesn't know the difference. To your body, it doesn't matter. Your body just needs to get the words out in order for you to heal and feel a little bit better. This particular exercise is really helpful if the person is still alive and you need to have the conversation, because then you have run through using the words, maybe stumbling through the words, and you get all of the emotions out of the way first before you have to actually have the real conversation with the person. Will you still get that adrenaline rush? Will the cortisol still kick in when you're talking to the person? Absolutely. But it's not brand new, and it's not as restrictive and not as terrifying when you've had this practice run first and then talk to them. By the time you talk to them, your body will have calmed down. You'll be a little more regulated by the time you talk to them. So that's number 3. Have that empty chair conversation, or that next level, role play with somebody. That conversation that you want to have with the person you're most upset with. The person who didn't meet your needs that you were expecting to meet them. The person who abused you. The person who abandoned you. Whatever the case may be, have that conversation in a scenario that is in a controlled environment. That can make a difference to helping you heal. Number 4, do breath work to self-regulate. This sounds super simplistic, but I promise you it works. It is said that all it requires is 6 fully deep breaths, full diaphragmatic breaths, to recalibrate when you're dysregulated. Somebody says something that makes you instantly angry, 6 deep breaths, like the breaths that expand your stomach, not the breaths that expand your chest, but the belly. Those are diaphragmatic breaths, those deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. 6 of those slow, intentional, diaphragmatic breaths can help you recenter and re-regulate. That is a cheat code for any moment in your life, including what I talked about with the grief, and the grief is expressing itself. After you've expressed yourself, that breath work will help. You'll recalibrate. If it's a thing where you had the ugly cry, 6 deep breaths, you'll feel better after that. If it's a thing where you're angry and you got like super tight, 6 deep breaths. In through the nose, and make sure it's your belly that's expanding and not your chest. Out through the mouth. You'll recalibrate. If you're feeling anxiety, stuff is stacking up too much, your workload is piling up a little too much, 6 deep breaths, recalibrate, recenter, re-regulate. Because when we peak emotionally, we lose our ability to think clearly, which hinders our decision making, which then causes us to procrastinate. Remember the mission of this show. I am the procrastination bully. I'm helping you move the needle towards that luxury item. So if the procrastination is coming from anxiety, do that breath work, have that empty chair exercise if your anxiety is tied to somebody you need to talk to about something or talk through something with. Grieve your losses, use your words. That feelings wheel is clutch. Okay. Number 5, journal prompts. So I had a previous episode where I went over several journal prompts in that particular context, I was getting you prepared to enter into the next year, into the new year. However, those questions that I asked you are personal development questions, so they can apply to any time in the year. So for instance, one great journal prompt that you can use is, if I were talking to somebody who is in the exact situation I'm in, what would I say to them? What advice would I give them? Write out that advice and then execute. Sometimes we can't think of a solution for ourselves, but we are always better equipped to help others, right? And I was talking to one of my coaching clients and we talked about this, and she was asking, why is that? And I explained to her, that's how God wired us. We're wired to be interdependent. Our wisdom, our greatness, our genius is innate to us because we're shaped in God's likeness and image, because it's intended for others. We're supposed to use our creative genius to help other people. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to rely on other people to sharpen us with their genius and their insight and their creativity and their ideas. So, in a situation like that, if you're feeling stuck, that's one journal prompt that can help you. If you're grieving, that is a journal prompt that can help you. If you're angry, that is a journal prompt that can help you. If you're procrastinating because you feel unmotivated, that's a journal prompt that could still help you. If somebody else was in my exact situation, what advice would I give them? What would I tell them to do? Once you write all that stuff out, execute. The solution, 9 times out of 10, the solution is already in you. You just have to get it out. And that is a journal prompt that can help you get it out. If you're someone who's an external processor, you talk through things and your solution comes as you talk through things, then this is one of those times when you'll want to phone a friend. Call somebody so you can externally process with them. And that way you'll hear yourself say the solution and then execute on that. So that's one journal prompt. I'll share one that I learned from Ali Abdaal. He called his the 10-10-10 rule. There's a more general name for it in the world of personal development and therapy. But in terms of anxiety or like being beholden to how others perceive you, that self-consciousness, that perception issue, you ask yourself these series of questions. Will this matter in 10 minutes? Will this matter in 10 weeks? Will this matter in 10 years? Ask yourself those questions. Whatever that thing is that you've been stewing on, the thing that you're afraid to do, you're procrastinating because you're afraid to do it, even though you know you need to. Maybe it's the imposter syndrome thing. Ask that. Like, your fear of what others think of you, will their idea of you matter in the next 10 minutes? Will it matter in the next 10 weeks? Will it matter in 10 years? Based on what you're doing. Target audience is one thing. I get that. Like your client avatar, your customer avatar, I get that. Being concerned with their perception, that's important because you're serving them. But I'm talking about you doing your thing and being concerned about your network, like your family members or your friends or that kind of thing. People you know, acquaintances, especially those who don't have enough context to what you're doing. Will their opinion matter in the next 10 minutes? Will it matter in the next 10 weeks? Will it matter in the next 10 years? If the answer to those questions is no, keep it pushing. Keep working towards your luxury item. Do not worry about what they're going to say about you or to you concerning it, especially if they don't have context. If they're not in the industry that you're working towards, they don't have the context. They don't have the expertise. So their opinion is not going to be a fit. Their opinion is not a fit. Okay? Pause that, repeat it, write it down if you need a more diplomatic way of saying your opinion don't matter. Like, that is the more diplomatic way to say it. Your opinion is not a fit for what I'm doing. I appreciate your feedback. Unfortunately, it is not a fit for what I'm doing. Thank you, though. Okay? So, quick recap. Use your words. Refer to that feelings wheel and use your words. Be as specific as possible about how you feel. Like, you know what? I know you were saying that as a joke, but that hurt. That honestly hurt me. That hurt my feelings. Because, dot, dot, dot. When you explain that, people have a clearer idea of how you're experiencing them. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you express how you've experienced a person, you can gauge your proximity to them going forward based on their response. If their response is, oh, my bad, I didn't mean it like that, if it's genuine, if they're genuinely apologetic, then that means they likely really didn't know. And that's the thing. Most people are in their own world. They operate in their own mode, so they don't necessarily know how they're affecting you. A Harvard study showed that 85% of people thought they were self-aware, when the truth of the matter is only 15% are. Only 15% of the people in this study on a national scale are truly self-aware. So half the time, people don't know what they're telling you. Like, they don't know how their words are landing on you. They don't know how their gestures are landing on you. They're simply moving based on their wounds. Because if you ask anybody in my family, one of the favorite phrases of mine is unhealed people. There are a lot of us who are unhealed walking around here. And we end up unintentionally mistreating people because we're unhealed. And that's the importance of this episode and these approaches. So 1, use your words. 2, grieve your losses and voids. Grieve your unmet needs. Allow your body to express that loss. Have a funeral, write an obituary if that particular exercise is better for you. Like, literally write out an obituary for that unmet need, for that lost childhood, for that hurt girl or boy that was abused. Have the funeral, write the obituary, write your feelings down on paper, and then burn the feelings to allow your mind and your body a sense of closure. Number 3, have the empty chair conversation, or the upper level of that, have a role play with somebody you trust. But either way, have the conversation with that person you want to confront before you actually have the conversation with the person. Do it by yourself first or with someone you trust in that controlled environment. That will help your body re-regulate. It will help your body re-regulate. So by the time you have the conversation with the person, you're speaking from a place of peace. Even if you do still get very tense when you're in that person's presence to have that conversation, it won't be nearly as intense as if you approach the conversation blind. Do it in a controlled environment first. Allow your body to come down a little bit. so that by the time you get to them, you're speaking from truth and not from pure raw emotion. Number 4, do that breath work to regulate in every moment that it's needed. 6, diaphragmatic breaths. In through the nose, make sure it's your stomach that's expanding because that's your diaphragm going down, and then out through the mouth. 6, slow, deep diaphragmatic breaths helps you center and re-regulate so that you can think clearly again. You'll take in more oxygen so you can think clearly again and make the decisions you need to make. Okay? And number 5, the journal prompts. I gave a couple of examples here, and I'll link at the end the link to the video that I went over with those journal prompts. And by all means, use the tools available to you. My video is going to be there, but also use ChatGPT, use perplexity.ai, whatever, use Gemini, whatever AI tool that you want to use to search and comb the internet for effective journal prompts that are therapeutic. And give it the prompt that the machine is a world-renowned therapist, a world-renowned trauma therapist, so that it then takes on that persona and then kicks out quality answers for you and not some generic stuff. The more specific your prompt is, the better the quality of the answers that it gives you. Okay? That's a bonus cheat code right there in general, not just for the journal prompts, but in general. Anything you want to use AI for, the more specific your prompt is, the more context you give the machine, the better the answers it will produce for you. Okay? But this is my plea to you. If you have wounds, things that are unhealed, unmet needs, if you're going through the stages of grief, do your work in the process. And that asterisk that I gave you at the beginning, that's going to be in all caps through all of this, is community. Make sure you're a part of one. If you want to join the Goal Getters community, follow me on Instagram at Getting the Win Show and DM me. I'll get you into mine. But find a community. If you're not already part of one, find a community where you can feel safe, seen, heard, known, and loved. Feel safe. So that you can share what you're doing, share your feelings, share your journey in a place that is trusted, where your heart is safe and your body can relax, re-regulate, so you can think more clearly and make those sound decisions and be more willing to execute on your luxury item so you can move the needle and get that thing done. Okay? Remember, I'm the procrastination bully. I'm coming for the procrastination in you, not coming for you. I'm bullying the procrastination that's in you so you can move the needle and get your luxury item completed. Hopefully this made sense. I hope this was beneficial for you. Remember to like, share, follow, subscribe, all that fun stuff if this video was helpful for you or if you think it'll be helpful to somebody that you know. Share it with them. Hit that like button so that the algorithm will make sure that more people see it. And of course, subscribe on YouTube at Getting the Win. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and Threads at Getting the Win Show in those places. Okay? So, yeah, spread the word on this one because we all need to heal. A lot of us are walking around with wounds and our decision making is being affected. We're procrastinating because we're not healed. We're not fulfilling those things that we need to fulfill because we're not healed yet. And these are some things you can do if you can't afford therapy right now or if you had a bad therapeutic experience. Let me close with this. I believe I went over this when I talked about the inner child exercise. So I'm going to recap, not the inner child exercise, but the exercise God walked me through before doing the inner child exercise, because this pre-work was clutch with my inner child exercise, that letter that I wrote in my journal to my inner child. In fact, I'll link to that episode as well. That way you can hear that, the letter to the inner child, the way that I work, the way that I frame that letter. Because that's something, that is a work prompt that you can use as well. That's a journal prompt you can do as well. That will be extremely helpful, because this will be adult you saying the things to the child in you that had those unmet needs, so you guys can integrate. Those two parts of your psyche can integrate and you can feel more whole. Okay. But this was a pre-work that God walked me through. He had me write down, one, all of my traumas, all of them, from childhood to adulthood, all of them, all of my traumatic experiences. And he had me date them. Even if I didn't have the exact dates, at the very least, the month and year in which they happened. Okay. And then each of the traumas, he had me draw them in separate shapes based on what they were. In my case, just in terms of transparency, there are some instances that were sexual traumas. That was one shape. In other instances, they were traumas in rejection. That was another shape. In another instance or two, they were abandonment traumas. That was another shape. That way I had visual cues to know, okay, this was this, this was this, this was this. Okay. And then writing those categories out. Like, okay, abandonment. This was what happened here. This trauma, this trauma, this trauma is abandonment. This trauma, this trauma, this trauma was abandonment. And seeing the dates will also help you draw the bridge to the way you're behaving now. So you can explain the behaviors that are no longer serving you. So that's the next thing you're going to write. You went through the traumas, you put the dates on them, you categorize them. And then the next thing you're going to write are all the behaviors that are in your life right now, all the habits that don't serve you. The reason you're doing this is to make the connection between the behaviors that don't serve you and which trauma it's connected to. That way you can see with your own eyes, oh, this is what's causing this. It's very liberating when you can put language to what you're experiencing. Because again, the body needs words to heal. So when you have the language to explain how you're feeling and where that comes from, then you can take action to correct it. Okay? So that's a bonus journal prompt, one that could be life-changing for you if you do it. But do your work. Do your work. Because once you get past these things and start to heal, you're less likely to procrastinate. Or at the very least, if you're tempted to procrastinate, if you're in community, you have who you can call and explain why. And then that person can help you move past that temptation to procrastinate, or get you out of the funk that you're in of procrastination, so you can get the ball rolling again towards your luxury item. Okay? In the meantime and between time, have a great rest of your Wednesday and a great and productive rest of your week. Peace.